I'd like to welcome to this box Mike Pratt. He is a grazier from Central West here in Queensland, and he's been a producer in the rangelands between Hughenden and Stonehenge for much of his time in primary production. He is currently the president of Ag Force's Sheep and Wool Board. He has experience in local government, and he is also the deputy chair of DCQ, and pretty much an all-round good guy. So welcome, Mike Pratt.
Thanks very much, Nicole, and good afternoon, everybody, and congratulations to Australian Rangeland Society and Desert Channels for putting on an amazing conference under difficult and challenging circumstances. And thank you to Dave Phelps and the ARS for this opportunity to share my experiences regarding enterprise choices and drought resilience. My wife Sue and I currently live in the open Mitchell Grass Downs bioregion at Bamban, 95 kilometres southwest of Longridge. And as we are nearing retirement, we recently sold our Barcoo Shire properties, Belfield near Stonehenge, where we ran merino sheep and commercial goats, as well as the adjoining Waroona, where we backgrounded cattle within a cell grazing operation. That's Sue in the top photo prior to us buying Bamban in 2005. Where we were rotating our breeders every 2 to 3 days for 44 different paddocks. They do become very quiet. Since moving from Richmond in northwest Queensland to Longridge in 1996, we've continuously run a self-replacing merino flock, which has always been our bread and butter. We also maintained a Brahman breeding enterprise background in the Angus Cross steer progeny out to feeder weight and the heifers to peg tested calf for PDIC. Our cattle enterprise enabled us to develop and expand our businesses until 2016, when we finally had enough of chasing cattle adjustment and decided to sell all our breeders and concentrate on trading. Battling one drought after another and having various numbers of breeders almost continually away on adjustment, the penny finally dropped that to be sustainable, we needed to run an enterprise mix that is not only profitable, but also, just as importantly, compatible with our local climate and environmental conditions. We decided to bite the bullet and buy 1,800 feral nannies and 60 billies from Burke. We believed that running small stock in Western and Southwestern Queensland would give a better return on investment and in the long term, which has been verified by Marie Bowen and Fred Chudley from Department of Agriculture and Fisheries in their recent publication. It shows that over the last 10 years in Central Western Queensland, meat sheep and commercial goats have been the most profitable enterprises, both returning approximately $49 gross margin per dry sheep equivalent. That's the dark blue and the green. Closely followed by a self-replacing merino flock on $44 per dry sheep equivalent, with trading cattle and breeding cattle on $38 and $34 respectively. Interestingly, the next slide shows the variations between these Central Western Queensland enterprises given today's values and improved seasonal conditions. As you can see, the values have increased astronomically above the 10-year average, especially for meat sheep on $173 per dry sheep equivalent, and a first cross boar goat herd currently on $145 per dry sheep equivalent. Merino sheep are currently on par with breeding cattle. However, the wool market has been enjoying an upward trajectory as the world recovers from and adapts to the impacts of COVID-19. Trading cattle is pretty marginal at present, having to pay 650 cents a kilogram for flatback weaner steers, and selling the feeder steers they're replacing for 450 cents per kilogram. However, running cattle is still necessary to maintain a healthy stand of Mitchell grass, otherwise it can become overgrown, unpalatable, devoid of protein after a run of a couple of good seasons. Although current values are fantastic, our production is still governed by what goes down their necks. Unfortunately, it has forgotten to rain far too often in Western Queensland lately, as we're all well aware of. And as you will see from the next slide, shows our average rainfall over the last 20 years. Whether it's climate change or not, but 2 8-year droughts in 20 years would normally sink most rural businesses. Fortunately, in 4 of the 16 drought years, we have received above average rainfall, which, although very welcome, kept us going. not sufficient or widespread enough to break the ongoing drought. Furthermore, we were able to find good adjustment for both our breeder cattle and sheep, and thankfully livestock prices didn't crash. The next slide, also published in Marie Bowen's work, is somewhat confronting, as it shows the Queensland shires that have been drought declared at various times since 1964. You'll note that the shires spread across southwestern Queensland have suffered the most, the exception being Diamantina and Bellew, who have the benefit of large pastoral holdings and the floodwaters that flow down from the north. This historical record complements our decision to cease breeding cattle and concentrate on small stock. Traditionally, this area has been sheep country up until 1991, when the wool and sheep markets crashed, forcing many producers into running cattle to simply remain viable. However, the tide has now turned and sheep and wool are once again very profitable. The next slide shows the location on the 24 properties we had our cattle away on adjustment at various times over the years, in the 5 in New South Wales, where we sent our ewes in 2015-16. Those of you who have had stock away on adjustment will fully understand it doesn't happen without its challenges. It's a fine balancing act to make sure your stock remain contained, productive, to stay on side with the property owner and not to go broke in the meantime. It's now a belief that to run a sustainable and profitable cattle breeding enterprise in far western and southwestern Queensland, and keep your herd productive and intact, you have to be prepared to have them away on adjustment a lot of the time. This option, although expensive, still outweighs hen feeding them, as Gus mentioned, and all at home or selling off to buy back in when the drought finally breaks. So getting back to another reason for enterprise change, the next slide shows a total financial cost of $1.25 million, not including freight and running costs, for having some of all of our breeders away on adjustment for 13 of the years from 2000 to 2016. In stark contrast, our ewes, they're shown in yellow, were only away once on adjustment when they travelled into New South Wales in 2015 to return the following year at a cost of $130,000. The next slide sums up why we finally decided to sell our breeders and focus on small stock and trading cattle. In 2016, the financial, emotional and physical cost of having cattle away on adjustment 60% of the time was simply not an option anymore. We decided it's much easier to operate a business in harmony with our climate and geographical location. Unfortunately, due to wild dogs, one cannot run small stock in Western and Southern Queensland unless they are safer behind an exclusion fence. Therefore, prior to bringing our ewes home and purchasing goats in 2016, we erected 96 kilometres of wild dog exclusion fence around both Waruna and Belfield at a cost of $540,000. There's no way we were going to bring our sheep home or buy goats and have them attacked by wild dogs. The return on this investment was immediate, marking 93% or 4,000 lambs later that year, and over 80% the following couple of years. We've never achieved 80% previously, which indicated the level of losses due to predators. Another huge benefit of an exclusion fence has been able to manage total grazing pressure, that is the macropod population. 10 roos have the same DSE rating as 7 sheep or 1 400 kilogram steer. Furthermore, the other opportunities enable diversification into small stock to rest and rehabilitate degraded country and or establish improved pasture, eradicate all declared pest plants and animals, and become secure from transferable diseases and parasites within your own quarantine area. So in summary, my take-home messages are as follows. Southwest Queensland can expect to be drought declared on average 45% of the time. You can run a profitable cattle breeding enterprise provided you are prepared to spend a lot of time away on productive adjustment and meet the associated costs or stock well under current capacity. Meat sheep, then goats, then merinos are much more profitable and sustainable than cattle over the long term. To run small stock, an exclusion fence, which has many attributes, is essential. And if you want to diversify, improve your drought resilience and reduce risk, you can run meat sheep and or goats anywhere you can run cattle. That concludes my presentation today. Thank you very much for your attention and quite happy to answer any questions later on. Thank you.